In this episode, we get down and dirty with 5 ultimate rust buckets restored to sweet perfection.
It's stuff that excites me.
When the car arrived, it was clearly in need of a total restoration.
We've got classics returned to prestige.
Stays there for much longer, there's probably not be much of the car left.
Incredible barn finds.
The animals destroyed the inside of the car.
And rides destined for the scrap heap, but now worth big bucks.
He's been offered way over 6 figures.
What we accomplished with this car. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
But don't be fooled, because even the ones that look rusty may be deadly under the skin.
We get a lot of grief from people. You know what, though? I don't really care.
When it comes to resurrecting a rusty classic, one thing you need plenty of is time.
The customer wanted to restore the car for over 30 years. Probably the worst rusted car I've ever worked on. Finally, it's the best. The 64 GTO is special because it was the first car that had a medium-sized body with a big motor. Basically, they were the first muscle cars.
The original owner paid $4,500 with a little help from his mom. He was 21 years old and getting his first car that could comfortably carry the groceries while still having some serious street attitude. Now, after a 2-year build, this true American original will fetch way over 6 figures.
And the owner of this car actually bought this car brand new in 1963. It was his daily driver car. Late 70s, the fuel tank fell out of the car, so he had parked it in his barn. And the animals basically destroyed the inside of the car. After 30 years, he decided to redo the car. It had a lot of sentimental value to him, so he basically got in touch with me. We specialize in the muscle cars, and in particular, we specialize in Pontiacs. And we pulled it out of the garage after 30 years and started the restoration.
And this old GTO had a long way to go.
The car was really, really very rusted. The frame was real bad. We ended up putting new floors in, new trunk, the fenders, and the doors are all original to the car. The motor is original. We basically had to rebuild the motor. We built the transmission, all new brakes, all new suspension. Rear end was rebuilt. We left the drum brakes on the car. The customer wanted to leave it original as he had the car. The hardest part of the car was probably locating a 64 frame for it. You can see this is an early production GTO because of the dual belts that they put on the alternator for power steering. It does have an upgraded brake system just for safety reasons. Inside the car, there is the wood wheel, pretty rare option. And it did have these seat belts, which were not mandatory in 64, but this particular car came with seat belts on it. This was unique for the 64. 65, they went to the one underneath the plate. And there she is in all her glory.
Oh, man, that is one fine-looking ride.
We wanted to be correct for the car. We did upgrade a little bit on the suspension to help handling.
After decades as a rusty chicken coop, this ride is hot property once again.
He's been offered a lot of money for the car, way over 6 figures. The car is the first convertible produced for the 64 GTO. I prefer the classic cars just because they've got character. You look at the new cars today, they all look the same. Personally, the old cars are where it's at.
Brother, the proof is right there on wheels. From American muscle to a British classic. Our next owner's rust revival might look flawless now, but when he picked this baby up at a British auction, man, it was a mess.
When the car arrived, it was clearly in need of a total restoration.
The DB Mark III was considered the ultimate in sexy sports cars. They only built them for 2 years, but this iconic motor became the blueprint for all future Aston Martin designs. And looking at her go, you can see why. Man, that is one fine-looking car.
The car was a barn find. It was bought at auction in 2015. In fact, it was in such poor condition that we've had to effectively make a new body for the car.
Snapped up for under 50,000 bucks at auction, this classic car took 4,500 hours to restore to glory. It's an immaculate 3-liter straight-six example of a DB Mark III. James Bond's ride in Goldfinger. With only 551 built in the 1950s, don't bet on this baby fetching under $500,000 today.
We have a very fixed process for restoring cars. There's the sort of historical research part right at the beginning of the process. It's the last of an era. It's the last of a coach-built, separate chassis Aston Martin. Then we strip the car down to its component form, every last nut, bolt and washer. The body and the chassis are separated. They're cleansed of old paintwork and corrosion, and we work out how we would best go ahead with the restoration. The body was the hardest part of the car to restore because of the nature of the clamshell bonnet. They're a coach-built car, handmade from aluminium, and we've had to replicate much of that original coachwork.
Once they started, man, they covered every detail.
The car's equipped with an umbrella handbrake, as they're known, so a bit of a throwback there to the pre-war years. We've included a radio in the restoration, put some modern internals into, but it's in keeping with the period of the car. So let's have a look under the bonnet of this Aston Martin at the heart of the car. And to get there, we need to open this rather substantial bonnet catch.
That is heavy duty.
This has had a complete engine rebuild. Smooth running, sweet idle, gives good performance. Had a cast iron cylinder head originally. They were prone to cracking. This car's got a replacement.
This restoration is really about one thing, the finest British expertise.
There's a number of things which are really satisfying points in the restoration of the car. I think the first time the engine starts.
Music to my ears.
We do about 400, 500 miles of testing in a car that we fully restore. Definitely one of the perks of the job, having the privilege of driving these lovely cars. Here's a nice tight roundabout, power out of there. Oh, what a lovely thing. I think we can call the engine response lusty.
Yes, this baby is dripping in desire.
No spitting, coughing, and no antics like that. Pulls away lovely.
This sexy ride has already got the buyers lining up.
He's going to end up with, well, a very, very beautiful Aston Martin and probably one of the best DB Mark IIIs in the world.
From classic British to unlikely custom champion. Something awesome is alive on the roads of Canada. Voted the world's best custom. There ain't no way you're gonna miss this badass Buick. But you're not gonna believe what a rusty wreck this baby was.
I always felt like giving up. There wasn't a day where I didn't feel like we had taken on too much.
And it's not easy when you start with this.
When I was 21 years old, I had a 64 Riviera. I sold it to start my first business, and I thought to myself, I'm gonna have another one of those cars one day. One of my buddies happened to have one that he'd pulled the motor out, and it was a $400 rusty heap that he didn't want anymore, so I bought it from him. I didn't really know I was going to take it this far and get carried away, but that was the start of the car.
J.F. Launier's 1964 revision took over 20,000 hours of labor and cost over $300,000. Retaining the original 2+2 seating, this 6.2-liter former rust bucket fought off 8 finalists to win the prestigious 2014 Riddler Award for Customs at the Detroit Autorama.
It was ups and downs. It was always a battle to try to get enough money to buy parts, to find enough time in the week to balance family, business, and project of this magnitude. Just a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
But man, this ride stands out.
School bus yellow was an interesting choice. I wanted to build a car that was bright enough that people would notice it. And I watched a bus drive by the one day and I thought, you know, that might work. That might be the next street machine color.
But that's where the school bus comparison ends.
Super scary when I drove it the first time. We were doing donuts in the parking lot after one of the shows. People just couldn't believe it.
And it's no surprise this ride has so many fans.
It's the first car in 35 years to go to Riddler and be won by the owner and the builder. Super rare feat. It's hard to explain what we accomplished with this car. I mean, when you look at it, it started out as a $400 rusty car that somebody had discarded because it really wasn't worth anything. And then to take that and create the world's best custom car that year, it's basically like training somebody to learn a new sport and then trying to win the Olympics with it.
Brother, you built yourself a champion.
This car is what I wanted in a race car. This car is what I wanted in a show car. This car is every little bit of me.
From yellow muscle to a green machine. Our next ultimate ride is
Sleek, mean, and green. What's the fastest I've gone in this car? Am I allowed to say that on camera? I'm a law-abiding citizen and I do the speed limit. I'll leave it at that. My name's Tommy Jankos and this is my Ford 1973 XA Falcon Superbird hardtop.
When 12-year-old Tommy refused to let his dad sell the XA Falcon, he was already setting his sight on rebuilding it himself in the future. 25 years later, Tommy dragged the rusty wreck off the family farm and took on the 5-year rebuilding project.
This Ford is an iconic car. There's not many hardtops left.
It's a miracle it survived.
Car was bought brand new by my father. I remember growing up in it as a kid, sitting in the back seat until the time when, I think it was 1988, and Dad rolled the car into a ditch in an accident. Wrote the car off. It was my favourite car and I always knew that that was going to be my car one day.
For over 20 years, this ride was left to rot on the family farm.
I started getting a bit worried, thinking, well, if it stays there for much longer, there's probably not going to be much of the car left.
I mean, you know, I drove it once as a kid and I remember we had a really long driveway at home and I sat on my mum's lap and I was holding this very steering wheel.
Those emotional memories gave Tommy the drive to rebuild his dream.
As far as the whole restoration was concerned, I wanted to keep everything original. We started stripping the car down, took the engine out. The roof was complete write-off, so I had to buy another shell, replace the original roof that was on the car, retouch doors, put new guards on. We pretty much copied the same pattern plan in regards to the way the interior was. Took 5.5 years. It's pretty much a dream come true to think that I could drive this car now when growing up I thought I'd never drive it again after what happened.
And this near-perfect restoration meant a lot to the whole family.
Yeah, I've made a lot of grown men cry when they've heard of the story and my dad and mum seeing the car after it was rebuilt. makes me feel happy that I've made them happy. So it's a good story all around, really.
Sit inside, Mum.
Oh man, you got me choking up here too, bro.
Yeah, I always look forward to getting in this car and driving it, and it always makes me think back to when I was a kid and sitting in the back seat, just like my son does now.
I wanted to enjoy being able to drive the car, something that I always wanted to do as a child, and I want to be able to pass that down to my son as well when he gets a bit older. It will give me a lot of happiness and joy as well, watching him drive the car and keeping it in the family.
From a spotless Superbird to a proudly rusty relic. On the outskirts of Cali, these rust buckets are basking in the midday sun. But these vehicles are not a bunch of abandoned junk. They're a $500,000 derelicts. And below the rusty shell is a beautiful ride waiting to be found. Oh man, I was not expecting that.
Derelicts will never repeat the same build twice. Each one is a singular, high-functioning sculpture. I wanted something alternative, but imperfect, so I didn't have to worry about it. But I didn't want to be that guy who's like super stressed out about the first scratch, the bumper rash, stuff like that.
Don't be fooled by the scruffy exterior. Under the hood, this ride is in incredible condition. Industrial designer Jonathan's Icon team spent up to 3,000 hours on this two-car mashup. Some folks can't really wrap their heads around that rusty left-in-the-barn look, but me, I think it's really cool.
It's technically a Chrysler Town & Country, but the front hood and grille, which is a like condition, kind of sort of the same green 52 DeSoto sedan, bolted the two together, and then I was like, yes, okay, now we're on. Original car didn't have AC. All the knobs and the switches are still kind of sort of in the original position. For the modern AC controls, I could maintain the consistency, like same with the gauges. I didn't restore them and make them all pretty. Everything down to the acrylic and the typeface is authentic, but behind the scenes, it's all video circuit board, state-of-the-art. And then the audio system, it's a Bluetooth-dependent digital sound processor interfaced amplified audio system with bass.
Man, that does not come as standard. But if you want attention to detail, the Icon DeSoto has got it in spades.
Hey, you know, it's just fun to add a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, have a little sense of humor in these builds. With this one, I went to a really cool old aircraft surplus place and bought some vintage hardware that's used throughout the vehicle. There's a cool before-flight release safety pin that I used as the hold down on the air filter enclosure. Overflow reservoir for the radiator. I scored a 1800s whiskey bottle. And then with all of our vehicles, everything has our mascot, the Icon lizard, on him. Fun thing with the derelicts is he's never in the same place, and it's always responding to the shape of the car. Just feels natural, like he would sun himself there. He's right there up front on the hood.
When the DeSoto was completed, it took the custom world by storm.
We're a little pinched. Is Thursday or Monday good for you? Within like a week or two of finishing it, it started getting all sorts of love and attention. But I went, oh, I guess I can keep building these.
Jonathan and his team turn out over 10 of these a year, but this guy only takes on passion projects. If you want a derelict vehicle by this dude, there's some specialist criteria.
It starts with generally either a client has an appreciation for our antics and they come and say, I just love the concept. What do you want to build that you haven't built yet? Or it's hyper-specific. Something that the client already has a deep emotional relationship with. Then I'll get kind of down and dirty with the client to understand a great number of things, including what's their style? What are they into? Do they collect antiques? If so, like of what era? What materials do you find appealing? How obnoxious do you want it to be? Do you want it to be fast or do you want it to be stupid fast?
These customs range from $150,000 to $500,000. But I got a hunch that Jonathan ain't really in it for the bucks.
We get a lot of grief from people. They think we're idiots for putting all that time and energy into it, but leaving it looking as if it's left in the barn. You know what, though? I don't really care. It's stuff that excites me. And the fact that it's not for everyone kind of makes it better to me.
Hold on to your principles. Rust can bring you riches. Five incredible tales of rust to riches. A car might look beyond saving, but if you got enough love and chrome, anything's possible. I'll see you next time on Ultimate Ride.